Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Today I'm bringing you a long, carefully told story about Ebru Şahin and Akınözü. All the details are right here. If you enjoy deep dive narratives that respect both craft and privacy, please hit like, subscribe, and tap the join button to support the channel. Thank you, and let's get into the video. When Herkai first brought Ebru Şahin and Akınözü together, viewers were struck by how precisely their rhythms matched. The series was bold, romantic, and operatic, and their partnership anchored it with nuance, the measured pause before a line, the held gaze that said more than dialogue ever could. On screen they carried storms, off-screen, they were described by colleagues as disciplined, privately warm, and fiercely focused on the work. No one expected that the very qualities that made their collaboration so effective, loyalty, intensity, and strong boundaries, would later expose fault lines neither of them saw coming. According to people who watched events unfold from a respectful distance, the first small shift arrived after the show's initial glow had faded and each star moved into a new chapter of life. Ebru Şahin entered a season of personal stability with Cedi Osman, whose world, sports, training regimens, structured seasons, offered a very different cadence than a television set. Akınözü, meanwhile, was navigating a public relationship with Sandra, a presence who had become familiar to fans through carefully chosen photographs and low-key appearances. For a while, these separate realities ran parallel. Then, gradually, they began to intersect in ways that complicated old habits. The earliest tension didn't look like drama. It looked like logistics, overlapping commitments, crossed signals between support circles, two different philosophies of privacy under a single, very bright spotlight. What outside voices later called a negative turn began as a series of misunderstandings around boundaries, what should be shared, what should be protected, and who gets to draw the line when many lives are suddenly threaded through the same needle. One camp believed transparency would dissolve speculation, the other believed that the less explained, the less harmed. Neither position was wrong. But together, they created static. Whispers intensified when a delicate matter spilled beyond private conversations. People close to Akın say he'd been wrestling with the end of his relationship with Sandra, not abruptly, but as a slow, painful realization that their paths, once aligned, were veering in different directions. Choosing to end something that once felt inevitable is hard under the best circumstances. Doing it while watched by millions is exhausting. Wanting to handle the situation with grace, Akın turned to someone he trusted to read a room, Ebru. Hoping for help with tone, timing, and care. This is where the story bends. In the fog of emotion, intent can look like strategy, and sincerity can sound like pressure. Some in the orbit later said Akın implemented his decision through Ebru, asking her to help convey what he felt he couldn't articulate without causing further hurt. Others felt that any role Ebru played should have been minimal, for her sake and for everyone's peace. What is clear is that she tried to defuse rather than ignite. She set ground rules for discussions, kept the language neutral, and refused to assign blame where there were already too many eyes seeking a culprit. Even with the best intentions, not every bridge carries the weight placed on it. Within days, threads of conversation that had been private were tugged in public. Interpretations multiplied, screenshots circulated, and timelines were reconstructed by strangers as if they were investigators. People who had never met one another were suddenly positioned as antagonists in a story made sharp by assumptions. That's the nature of fame's echo chamber. A sentence becomes a signal, a pause becomes a verdict, and silence is taken as consent. Insiders describe Akın at this point as quietly devastated. Ending a relationship, particularly one as visible as his with Sandra, isn't a clean act, it's a series of endings, the routine of shared days, the small messages that make a morning kind, the knowledge that familiar plans are no longer yours to make. He reportedly withdrew from casual gatherings, kept press commitments short, and threw himself into physical training and script work. Heartbreak rarely looks like the movies. Most of the time it looks like showing up on time, doing the task in front of you, and saving the collapse for when the door is closed. For Ebru, a different burden set in. She had tried to be a bridge, but bridges get walked on from both directions. In the effort to keep kindness central, she absorbed more worry than she let on. Those close to her say she spent long evenings measuring words, checking that nothing she said could be carved into something more pointed. Beside her, Cedi Osman provided ballast, protective, steady, careful with space. The sports world knows how to handle scrutiny, routine becomes armor. Yet even the most dependable armor doesn't make the weight vanish. It only distributes it. Inevitably, the professional and the personal collided. The next time Akın and Ebru ended up in the same green room for a panel, the air felt thinner. Both were courteous, hello, thank you, good work, but the effortless shorthand that used to exist between them was gone. Crew members who adored their old sparring rhythm, jokes about marks, preferences for lenses, inside references to scene numbers, observed a deliberate politeness. There is nothing wrong with politeness. It just rarely replaces ease. At some point, a line was drawn. It wasn't theatrical. There were no public declarations, no scorched earth interviews. The line looked like this: fewer messages, then none. Fewer shared friends coordinating plans, then separate calendars. Offers that would once have sparked playful "I'll do it if you do it" texts were evaluated independently. Someone who knew both of them called it a functional silence, a choice not to revisit old territory until the noise around it faded. Another person put it more simply: they ended the friendship. Not forever, not with malice, just a recognition that what had been a comfort now felt like an amplifier. Fans, of course, had their own reactions. Some were furious at the idea that a private heartbreak might cost the public a prized artistic duo. Others insisted that no production or partnership is worth emotional confusion, and urged everyone to let time do the healing. There were threads defending Sandra, reminding people that she had been nothing but gracious in public, threads praising Cedi, whose measured silence read as loyalty, threads grieving a creative bond that once helped millions escape daily stress. In that chorus, you could hear love for all four names, and the complicated way admiration scrambles when faced with human limits. As the dust settled, the work continued, because it always does. Ebru approached new scripts with an appetite for characters who stand their ground without cruelty, women who refuse to become either saviors or villains for the sake of a headline. Akın leaned into roles that required endurance and restraint, parts that do not reward charm so much as attention. Both choices looked like responses to a year that had demanded integrity in the face of speculation. If artistry is a mirror, there's reflected resolve. What remains now is a lesson that extends beyond one set, 2 stars, and a cluster of headlines. When multiple relationships run through a single corridor, partner, colleague, friend, boundaries must be negotiated with care. Asking a friend to help communicate a painful decision is not inherently wrong, sometimes it is the kindest option. But it also asks that friend to carry a weight they did not choose, and sometimes the carrying reshapes the friendship itself. None of that makes anyone a villain. It makes them human. Will Akınözü and Ebru Şahin ever return to that easy, almost musical rhythm they once shared? The honest answer is that no one outside their closest circles can say, and those inside those circles aren't talking. What is clear is that both of them found a way to honor their work without inflaming old wounds, and to respect their current partners, Sandra, by acknowledging the dignity of endings, Cedi Osman, by guarding the grace of beginnings. In an industry that often confuses loud with true, they chose the opposite. If you've watched this far, you've probably felt a familiar mix of nostalgia and acceptance. We can honor what their partnership gave us without demanding it again at all costs. If time brings them back into the same story, let it be because the story deserves them, not because the public insisted. And if time keeps them on separate paths, let those paths be steady, generous, and private when they need to be. Thank you so much for watching. If you value narratives told with patience and respect, please like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts below, kindly and thoughtfully. Your support helps us keep the focus on the work and on the people behind it.